going on, everybody? Today's video is going to be a little different, but I think this is an important video to make for a number of different reasons. But mostly, especially for new anglers, I feel like it's easy to get discouraged when it comes to crappie fishing. So I wanted to share my experience and my father's experience this last time we went down to Lake Kissimmee. We stayed at Camp Mack Resort for 5 days, and buddy, let me tell you, it was tough. It was tough. You know, there's a lot of stuff we realized in hindsight, and that, you know, we thought we had things figured out, and you know, you think all the things are right, and in all actuality, they're not. And you know what? Things can be perfect. You know, weather, water temps, depth, vegetation, all the things can be perfect, and you may still never get a bite. The fish just may not be where you think they are. So anyway, that's kind of what this video is going to be about. Again, I just want to share our experience, kind of what we went through, and I'm going to be sprinkling in clips from the trip just to kind of give you guys a closer perspective as to the kind of things that we experienced and went through. So you know, if this is your kind of video, definitely stick through it. You know, you may learn something, you may not, but if you're more into just watching videos of catching fish, I've got plenty of those on the channel. Just click on the picture and take your pick. There's tons of them. Shellcracker, specks, whatever you want. So without further ado, let's dive in. So this was probably three weeks ago, I'd say. We planned a trip down to Camp Mack, which is off of the Kissimmee River, but attached to Lake Kissimmee. And we had, I believe, we had 3 days originally planned, going with family and stuff. But last year, the year prior, was the first time we went to Camp Mack. And we fished 3 or 4 days, I don't quite recall, but we fished hard. And we did not get into numbers until the very last afternoon that we were there, maybe the last 3 or 4 hours. We just happened upon this one spot with a nice mix of vegetation, and it happened. We got into them. I think we got, I don't remember the numbers, but maybe 15 to 20 in the cooler. And that kind of just, after 3 or 4 days of solid fishing, we were discouraged for sure. But to have that kind of finishing moment of the trip, it made it worth it, just because it finally paid off. So we were hyped for this trip. So like I said, this was probably 3 weeks ago or so. And so before we went, I kind of talked my dad into booking an extra 2 days in the cabin that we were staying in before everyone else showed up. And the idea behind that was, you know, okay, let's get there earlier than everyone, and that'll give us a little extra time to locate the specs, kind of get a better idea how they're moving, you know, what they're staying in, and that way, when the rest of the family gets here, you know, we can put them on fish. Because, I mean, let's be honest, anyone that's a serious pan fisherman, especially for specs, they know that it takes time and dedication. You don't always just go out there and bail fish. That's just not the way it is. And I think the same could be said for most species of fish, but crappie specifically they're mysterious fish, is the best way I can put it. I mean, as soon as you think you got them figured out, they're off doing something else, making you scratch your head. So anyhow, so that was our thinking. So we get there 2 days early, check in, get our stuff done, and we head out to another lake that's on the opposite side of where we're staying at Camp Mack. It's Lake Hatchineha, I believe is the name of it. And that's where we did pretty well last time. So we went out there, and so our first spot we're headed to was towards where we did well the last day of last year. And we stopped at this little middle island, I guess you could call it. It wasn't even really an island. Bear with me, I got a plane flying overhead here along with some whistling ducks. So anyway, like I said, we stopped at this spot in the middle. It's just kind of like a flotilla of all sorts of vegetation, grass, lily pads, bulrush, and we already knew by some other guys that I follow online that the specks were in the grass. We knew this. And so it had a really nice patch of, we call it Kissimmee grass, right in the middle of all this other vegetation. We head in there, drop power poles down, but we're there for maybe 5 minutes, and I'm jigging, pulling a nice size speck. First speck of the season. I was stoked. We were both freaking stoked. We're like, oh yeah, this is it. And not, you know, maybe 3 or 4 minutes after that, my dad pulls in an even bigger speck, and he's using grass shrimp. And we're like, this is it. We got it figured out. The first 5-10 minutes, we were just ecstatic. And the wind was blowing. Sneak peek at what we got coming in. Big old white caps. Yeah, good luck with that. Woo-wee, that's cold. Goodness. Ooh. That is nippy. I want to know how hardcore we are. This is how hardcore. We didn't care. We're like, you know what, the fish are biting. We'll sit through whatever we got to sit through. So anyhow, we sit there after them fish, and I think my dad may have pulled in one more an hour after that, but it just stopped. We got the first 2 or 3 fish out of that spot, and everything just turned off. It was the craziest thing. And we stayed there for 2.5 hours maybe before we finally accepted defeat, and we moved on to, you know, some other spots. So that's how the trip started, and we fought hellacious weather those first 2 days that we got there early. And man, that weather was rough. That wind was howling. We eventually found some spots that kind of blocked out the wind. It was coming out of the northeast, and I mean, we hit it hard, but we got hit hard. So that's pretty much how the trip started. Really high highs and then lows. Just, and again, it leaves you there scratching your head like, what are we doing wrong? I mean, I was hardcore jigging with jigs, and my dad was religiously jigging with grass shrimp. So we were giving them the pick of the litter. They could eat whatever they wanted, and my dad was steady catching fish, but mostly really small, like baby bluegills. I think he picked up a shellcracker here and there, but all small fish. Nothing of considerable size worth keeping, except every once in a while throughout the whole trip he'd pull one in that was not slabo size, but maybe respectable. And I just want to clarify, in this lake, Hatchineha, the vegetation was just spectacular. I mean, any spec fisher's dream vegetation. I'm talking a nice mix of everything. And as we kind of skirted around the lake, I mean, just, you couldn't ask for better stuff. And talk a perfect depth. I mean, anywhere from 4 to 6 feet. Some sections were about 7. The water temps were around 86, so the water temp was still high. Like, in hindsight, we realized that, you know, when we went last year, it was 2 weeks later in the month than we came this time. So we were early this year. and we hadn't had any real cold fronts yet. Last year we had a hurricane roll through, so the water was just billowing through the river. And this year, again, just wasn't like that. The water levels were good, but water temps were still a bit high. So, these are all things that, in hindsight, when we're trying to figure out why the fish aren't biting, there's no definitive answer to any of this. But as the days went on, first day, other than those first few fish, was just, we were fighting for a bite. And the second day, it wasn't much better, and the weather was still crappy, windy, rainy. Even the water clarity was optimal. I mean, it was just some slight dirtiness, but for the most part, it was pretty clear. Up until you get on the south end of that lake, then because that's where all the wind was blowing everything. So of course it was much more dirty on that side. But we tried everything. I mean, we were everywhere on that lake. After we gave up on Lake Hatchineha, we moved down the river up to the mouth of the river to Lake Kissimmee. To a couple spots we did well. We did okay the previous year. And it didn't really pan out, but we ran into some bass fishermen that were there. And they saw what we were doing. They're like, "Hey, have you been to North Cove?" And we're like, "Well, not yet, but that's our plan," because the guys that we follow, shout out Kissimmee Special, they were talking about North Cove, and obviously we weren't doing anything where we were, so we're like, you know what, that's the next stop. So we're like, no, not yet, but that's our plan for tomorrow. And the guys were like, we were over there today, and something we were talking about after we were talking to them, they were saying that they were seeing the specks busting at the top, which specks they can do, but it's not a real common thing for them. Specks are vertical feeders, and they are typically suspended fish. So we took it with a grain of salt, but we knew that that's where we were going to go anyway the following day. So fast forward to the next day, we shoot out first thing in the morning to North Cove, and it was primo morning. I'm talking, after getting beat to death by rain and wind for the first 2 days, you couldn't ask for a more beautiful morning. So we shot out across the lake, really enjoying the sunrise coming up. It was just gorgeous. Basically glass flat, really nice morning. And we get set up over in North Cove. We pick a spot that looks good depth, nice grass, and not a bump. And we moved around North Cove, every which end, nothing. I think my dad pulled in a single bluegill, but man. And by this time we're just like, what, okay, it's the water temperature, it's from the bad weather previous to this, and it's this and that, and maybe it's this, and no, it's that. You're at this point, you're coming up with every excuse as to why these fish aren't biting. And the reality is, we were just too early. That's exactly what it was. We were just too early in the season. You can pick up stragglers here and there, and these guys, Kissimmee Special, when they go out, I mean, you can even see their videos. They're on a good day, they'll pull in 25 or so. But these guys are out there every single day, first thing in the morning, Monday through Friday. And when you're on vacation like we were, yeah, we're gonna hit it hard, but we only have 5 days to try to find these fish. These guys live on the lake. They live and breathe it. So they've got a much better perspective as to where to go, and maybe a better understanding of the fish overall in that lake. So North Cove was not the answer. So we moved outside of North Cove, around the edge. I think we're around can't remember which, Rabbit Island I think it's called. And then on the backside of North Cove. And my dad pulled in 2 or 3 more specks. They weren't jumbos, but you know, they were every bit of 10-inch. But again, it was just such a slow bite, and they were not hitting jigs. I got a few good thumps, but nothing committed. They would only eat grass shrimp. You know, I caught that first speck on a jig, and I think that was just dumb luck, honestly. So, you know, after this, I mean, I'm getting pretty discouraged, and you know, my dad's back there trying to hype me up. He's like, oh, no, don't let it get to you, don't let it get to you. And like, I'm still having a good time because I'm fishing with him, and you know, we got family coming in. But you can't help but feel bad, especially when you're committed on a fishing trip like this and it's just not paying off. And I think it's okay to have those feelings, but you know, I could tell he was kind of worrying that I was just losing my gusto, and to a certain extent I was. And there's another kind of bad thing about fishing on Lake Kissimmee, for anyone that's not done it, are the Kissimmee flies. My God, you know, they're always pretty bad, but it seemed like this year they were just obnoxious. I mean, you roll into a patch of grass or a patch of bulrush, I mean, you can see them just stacked up on all that vegetation, and as soon as you hit them, they explode. It's really, and they're just a nuisance. They don't bite you. They don't, you know, they're not gonna hurt you or anything. They're just a nuisance, and they get all over everything. Any crevice, nook, cranny in the boat, fishing rods, they're on you, and they stick like glue. So by like the 4th day or something, 4th or 5th day, we're fishing the main lake, and we hit a patch out in the open, and we just get covered. It's insane. I mean, they were all over everything, and both of us are wrapped up. We got our face masks on. I got a hood on, sunglasses. I mean, they're on us like stink on poop. Yeah, the 4th day, you know, we came in, whatever, and I was taking my wife out for a little midnight cruise because she wanted to go out, and I figured that'd be a good opportunity to spot some frogs because, you know, we got the airboats, and we brought all the frog gigging gear. So I load up the boat, go out, and I get out of the river, and the bugs were so freaking bad I couldn't even navigate. I was just getting smacked by thousands of bugs, and I said, okay, this just isn't safe. So turn the boat around, start heading back down the river to get back to camp, and the boat just decides to drop half RPMs and then crap the bed. And I'm like, okay, here we go. You know, what else can go wrong on this trip? So light it back up, and same thing, only this time it doesn't even drop RPMs, it just turns off. And check engine light's on. So anyway, long story short, I'm able to put it back to camp, and I said, you know, we'll worry about it tomorrow. But I barely got any sleep that night because I'm just reeling. Like, what's wrong with my boat? It's a brand new boat, brand new motor. So the next day, our buddy Todd, who's staying there with us, and my brother and my dad, you know, we pull it up to the sand flat there, and we're messing with it, and Todd's looking at it. He's well more rehearsed in this kind of stuff than I am. And at one point it was running on 1 cylinder. So at a certain point I'm just like, okay, this is a much more serious problem. It's not, you know, vapor lock. It's not something simple that we can solve here. So at that point I said, listen, let's just throw it on the trailer. My dad had brought his boat anyway. I'll bring it back up to Astor when I get home and have guys that are rehearsed in this. And I knew whatever it was going to be under warranty. It's a brand new motor. So so fast forward, we get my dad's boat in the water, and that's what we fished in the last day and a half. So, or you know what, actually no, we we fished in it the last day, because after I loaded my boat up, I had had enough. I said, I'm ready. Let's go out on the airboats. I need to disconnect from this piss poor experience of fishing and now my boat. I was discouraged as you can get. And my dad was good with it too. He's like, yeah, let's do the airboats. Because I didn't get to go out with him last year, and my brother just built a new one, and Todd had just built a new one, and I'm really glad we did that. We had a freaking blast. So that was a great way to just kind of get my mind off of what had happened. And so the next day, we had my dad's boat in the water, or no, we dumped it in the water, and it was way more busy because this is Saturday now. And my goodness, airboats galore. And they were having a bass tournament, I believe, so there's a lot of just boats in general everywhere. And we fished out in the lake, nothing. I think he had a bite. He saw the fish come up, and he said it was a big speck, but you know how the old timers get. Hugest fish ever. But nothing in the boat. And halfway through the day, and he looked at me, he's like, you look like you're ready. I said, I'm done. At a certain point, you just admit defeat. I mean, we were there for 5 days. I mean, we hit every kind of vegetation that's available in that lake, and it just wasn't happening. So, crappie fishing ain't easy. I don't care what anyone says, how pro you are. Like I mentioned, LiveScope has put a lot better perspective on the sport. And I have a LiveScope, but I have not installed it on the new boat, and I don't think that I ever will. Just because where we live here in Florida, we don't have real deep lakes. We don't have, the crazy kind of structure that the guys do up north fishing for, the white crappie. And, I can use it in certain situations, but it's just not my style. And, when I bought that, I was following all the hype, and honestly, it gave me a better idea of how those fish react to jigs and colors, the speed of how you're dropping it down. I feel like it's a good tool to understand the fish a bit more, but it's not an end-all be-all. It's not going to catch the fish for you. But these guys that are fishing crappie tournaments, I get it. You need the latest tools and technology to keep up with everyone else and stay on top of those fish. But every time I used it, I wasn't having fun, and not like I do when I'm fishing shallows and thick vegetation. Like that's the stuff that I like doing, and that's all right. So anyway, so anyone else that's out there that's just getting into crappie fishing, or has been crappie fishing for a long time like I have, you're gonna have these days, and you're gonna have these experiences where you think you're doing everything right, and you may be, and those fish they're not ready, or they're not where you think they are. And in our case, our overall opinion was we were just too early in the season. We were too eager. I mean, for what it's worth, 3 weeks prior to this, we were bailing shell crackers over in Lake Okeechobee in the end of September. Like, just none of it makes sense. And again, it's okay to feel discouraged about fishing, whether it's specks or any other kind of species of fish, but once that discouragement kind of rolls off you, like when I got home, I was so just exhausted from the week, but also just it took me an extra week to even pull the footage off all my GoPros just because I just didn't want to relive what the poor fishing that we went through. I wasn't ready. But I knew I had a bunch of footage, which is going to be baked into this, and maybe another video that I was going to use. But it is tough, and you know, a lot of it comes down to the time of the year, you know, what period of the season you're in. And I think for our case, you know, yeah, there's guys out there catching specks, but you can tell they're not in the way they should be in. And like now, we are towards the end of October, and we've had 2 fronts now. A real nice one is just finishing off now. It's about 76 degrees outside right now. It's beautiful. But the last 2 or 3 mornings, it's been low 60s. So, you know, my dad's saying down in Okeechobee, water temp is, I think he said 73 or 74, I believe. I haven't had the boat on the river yet, but I plan on going out in the next couple days. But up here, it should be low 70s easy. So, any day now, it's gonna just start happening, and that's what I'm really looking forward to. So, as I said, crappie fishing ain't easy, and it's a tough sport to get into for people that are coming from like saltwater fishing, where there's like nonstop action. Because I mean, I grew up with my dad freshwater fishing and speck fishing and stuff with minnows, and then kind of transitioned into saltwater. So most of my memories are on saltwater. And then as I got older, into my later teens, into my 20s, early 20s, he kind of went back into the freshwater stage. And that's, you know, I think when I was about 18, 19, 20 is when I really saw how addicting crappie fishing was. That's where I fell in love with it. So there's so many angles to it, and there's so many things that can go right and so many things that can go wrong. But all I can say is just stick with it. It's you're gonna have bad days, and you're gonna have good days. And in my experience, I have more days where I don't do well than I do days I do very well. But that just makes you appreciate the days that you do really well, especially the days where you're limiting out. I mean, I consider myself a pretty well-rehearsed angler, but you know, it's those limit out days, those are kind of few and far between. You know, there's guys out there like my uncle's brother Terry, who they got it. You know, they got that element in their blood where they're just freaking bailing fish all the time. Every once in a while he'll have a bad day, but I mean, compared to most people, he's got that thing. But every year I feel like I learn a little bit more and more. And you know, you guys see these videos I post, and it looks great. I'm catching fish all the time, but that's the power of editing. You know, whether I'm out there half a day or a full day, you know, those are still many hours put into fishing. And I do my homework. I'm hitting dozens and dozens of spots on whatever body of water I'm on, and it takes work. No one can go out there and just start bailing fish. It's just not how it works. I mean, you can get lucky, don't get me wrong, but if you want to be good at it, you got to put in the time. You got to do your homework, study up, start a fishing journal, you know, learn the patterns year by year, like what's different. You know, that's the only way you're really going to understand the fish better. So, hopefully some of this helps aspiring anglers out there, or even guys that are just having a bad day. I get it. I've been there. We've been there. You know, I've gone through the worst of it. There's not too many other things that could have gone wrong on this last trip to Kissimmee, between poor fishing, poor weather, and a busted ass boat. So And on that note, I did end up taking the boat to back to Astor. Ended up being the wire harness. So they just swapped out the whole thing, and it's been running fine now. So that's back in action. And as I mentioned, I'll be getting back out on the river here in the next couple days. As long as the wind isn't too terrible. And keep hunting them. That's the funnest part, honestly, is hunting the specks. So get out there, find them fish, and you will be ecstatic when you do, because it's a great sport, and it's tough in a lot of ways, but very rewarding. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I just kind of wanted to share our Kissimmee experience and kind of bring some light at the end of a dark tunnel for some people that have similar experiences with crappie fishing, because sometimes it sucks. So that's about it. So yeah, like I mentioned, if you guys want to see some cool content, I've got a few videos back on the channel, shell crackers, some Mayan cichlid fishing. Yeah, so click around. I'm sure you'll find something that you like, and stick with the channel, because obviously end of October we're fixing to get into it. So you will see me on the river, you will see me in a few new bodies of water, and it's gonna get good. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you haven't considered subscribing, please do. That's all I gotta say. So see you guys on the next one.